Coogs House. New Joseph Duarte dropped on Monday, and it looks like we might have a front runner for the AD position.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater that came to step by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below if you put the milk or the cereal in your bowl of cereal first. We aren't quite to the point where introducing my 14-month-old to milk in his cereal, but you get the drift there. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. More on that fun stuff later. It does involve the Astros, but today we're going to be diving into the latest on the Houston athletic director search, right? We're going to talk about some people that are kind of at the fringes that may be candidates, one outside the box candidate. But first and foremost, we got to start with who is the potential front runner. Now, this is all stemming from a very short and brief article written, very informative, though, by Joseph Duarte, the Houston Chronicle. I want to give him credit for the reporting to get these names out of the guy as the people being discussed in the highest of circles with the University of Houston. And then I looked them up, and then I decided what I thought the pros and cons were, and I'm going to try and keep my opinion out of it for the most part. I think they're all great candidates in different ways. I think which ones I like will come through, though, in the talking. I can't hide that all the time, right? And so according to the Duarte article, there were kind of two people that were really between, with two other people kind of at the fringe or the edge, or also being discussed. I think Duarte used the phrase "in the mix," right? The front runner, as it presently stands in this reporting, again by Joseph Duarte, the Houston Chronicle, is Eddie Nunez. Eddie Nunez was reported, again, one source told the Chronicle that he was a front runner. He's the AD at the University of New Mexico, has been there since 2017. Now, before that, he was also a high-ranking admin in various different roles at LSU from 2003 to 2017. A lot of experience there at LSU at high-end power division football and other sports, obviously, right? And at LSU, well, he had a number of different roles. A lot of his titles had to do with communications, marketing. It's selling the athletic department at LSU. Now, some people will be critical and say it's really easy to sell. Everyone likes the Tigers in LSU. I get that, but I will also point out that you have to sell that to people who were already like in your court. You got to sell them and get them to keep coming, keep buying tickets, keep sending money, especially again in a frankly, the SEC country. While we think of Louisiana, it's like not a very big state. You got Arkansas right to the north. You got all those big programs you got to compete with right there, right? It's a very difficult job, I think. I think you'll see LSU come up with a couple different people's resumes because doing it there is impressive. That was where, again, we had a bunch of different high-ranking admin roles at LSU, and then became the AD at New Mexico in 2017. Quickly going through some of his bona fides at New Mexico, very big on supporting athletes academically and in the modern age of sports, also financially. A ton of success across different sports in the conference in his time there. Completely revamped the marketing program. A lot of people are saying Houston could use that as well. I think it's fair to say they could at least use some changes and some modernizations and some keeping up with the times of sorts. He completely revamped what they do in New Mexico, established a bunch of big partnerships to help the athletic department, and he completely reimagined, recreated, reestablished what they call the Lobo Club, which is like a way to enhance their fundraising efforts. While he's been the AD in New Mexico, he's also very well respected across all of college athletics, been on a bunch of different boards across the FBS, NCAA, the Mountain West Conference. If you want to go further back in the resume, I guess I didn't mention that he was a event manager at Vanderbilt, SEC Sports again, and further back, he was a Division I basketball player, finished up at Florida under Coach Billy Donovan. So he understands the athlete life as well. The biggest pro I see for Eddie Nunez of New Mexico is that he has done the AD job before. He has done it well. He navigated the shift in college athletics from trying to be amateurism in 2017 to trying to be this modern NIL wild, wild west in 2024, right? He's been involved in fundraising at New Mexico throughout that process and completely revamped and understands the idea of the importance of a modern marketing approach. Lots of experience in marketing at LSU as well. I think those all tie together. That seems like his strongest portion of his background. They hired Allie White, to be an assistant to the athletic director whenever they hire the AD. She'll be tied to a lot of major gifts. We talked about that in yesterday's episode. That was a hire it seems like was made over the weekend. And I guess I say it seems like, because I haven't seen any official push on that outside of some reporting we talked about yesterday. So go check that one out. But if they have that money person in place, having someone like Eddie Nunez in charge of marketing could create a great two-headed monster. Okay. I think that's a big way to look at this. Like, you're catching the next great thing and letting him become the next great thing at Houston, right? That's the big deal here, right? The biggest con I see is that, bluntly, Houston's in a power conference, and Houston's hoping to compete to stay in the top echelon of power conferences as things in college sports continue to change. Eddie Nunez's experience at the top of college athletics, as far as the size of programs go, was at LSU, but he got at LSU to go to New Mexico in 2017, took the head AD job, et cetera, et cetera. But that was before this gigantic shift into NIL. Well, whatever you want to think about Houston and their NIL programs presently and where they fit on the spectrum between New Mexico and LSU, the goal would be in the future to be much closer to the LSU side of that pendulum swing, right? It's not a light switch. It won't happen immediately, but the goal would be to be on that side. And it was a very different game when he was at LSU. So that's the pro, that's the con. I think that there's a very clear reason, though, with the experience he's got and the strengths he has, that he would be, as one source told the Chronicle, the front runner, right? That could be one of many sources. The other sources could all say something different, but I think that's why his name's getting tossed around with that. The other thing I'll say, too, is that it bodes in his favor, as it bodes in several people's favor. You'll notice that they've hired someone like Allison White. Again, it appears they've hired someone like Allison White to be the associate AD for development, major gifts, to continue to bring in money and work with high dollar donors and things like that for high revenue programs, because that means that can be a two-person job, right? If your strengths are in marketing or communications or selling the program at a more mass level, you can work together, right, with that new position. I think Ed Nunez would be a great fit for a number of reasons. I would not be upset with the hire of Eddie at all. I appreciate whatever source it was that told Duarte in the Chronicle that he is a front runner, because I appreciate people actually putting their feelings out there. I do wish we had a little bit more clarity on, I don't like anonymous always, but I get why that has to be the case in this instance. But Eddie is not the only candidate, right? There are other people being listed, including one big time person that is a little outside the box, but very much local. I want to talk about him in a second, but first, we're talking about creating winning programs. And if you like winning, want to make winning more interesting, you think you can win all the time, you got to do it over at FanDuel, because over the summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers to boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And all summer long, I've been telling you to make sure you go check in on the Astros at FanDuel. Yes, they had a bad month of May. They're right back at the top of the league. And frankly, if you're trying to get them to win the AL West, they're minus 210 recording this podcast. You should have taken them when I told you the first time. Over on the league winners, they're at plus 500 to win the AL, and they are at plus 1,300 to win the whole darn World Series. So trust me on this one. You should have listened to me in June, but if you listen to me now, go check it out at FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, so I mentioned that Eddie Nunez has been called by at least one source the front runner, right? And I think there's a lot of reasons to that. The person he seems to be in the most competition with, though, is a man named David Fletcher. David Fletcher is a local Houstonian, and he is in charge of Lone Star Sports and Entertainment. He's the GM and present tense GM of Lone Star Sports and Entertainment. Which, for what it's worth, is a big sports entertainment industry player in the city of Houston. And he's been in charge of some of the biggest NCAA events to come through Houston, some of the non-conference games at NRG. He's also been involved in things like Copa America and all kinds of different things that come through. He's an executive director of the TaxAct Texas Bowl as well. He understands creating big events in the city of Houston, right? Further, as the GM of those events, of the organization putting on those events, he also understands where the money sits in Houston. You got to go find it, right? He's not a Houston alum. He's connected to those other circles and understands the value of Houston, for Houston, by Houston, etc. I think that actually, in the way he's angling for this job, actually plays into his favor, right? Because he's not just connecting Houston alums back to universities, connecting people in the city of Houston to the university that wears the city's name on their chest. I think that's really important for this role if you're trying to explode the growth, grow really fast, right? He's also the director of the TaxAct Texas Bowl. So he's in charge of, making sure those events go off without a hitch. That involves, again, getting communication with sponsorships and things like that, high dollar situations in Houston. In the past, he was the director of corporate development and broadcasting for the Texans. He was a corporate development manager and was involved in communication and stuff like that with the Rockets as well, once upon a time. And I think as you look at his resume, the thing that stands out is he's got no real NCAA administrative experience. And I think that's his biggest pro. Here's why. You see people that have been around college athletics for a long time that get kind of stuck in the old way of doing things, right? They think about college athletics from frankly, back when Houston was good in the 80s. They think of college athletics back when we had Case Keenum running around in 2009. They think of old college athletics from a pre-college football playoff, a very different series of TV deals. Frankly, a world where the Pac-12 still exists, right? And now we're in a very different world of college athletics. We just are. He has no, air quotes, bad habits to bring with him from the old school, right? There's no preconceived notion of amateurism and what this is supposed to look like. He's a guy that understands business, dollars, cents. He gets that in the present tense in all of his ventures, and he brings that with him to this venture, right? Now, I understand there are ins and outs of college athletics that you need college people around him for. That's why setting him up again with people like the Allison Whites, the world we just mentioned, or other people in the department that can help surround him with people that understand the college side of this thing would be very important, obviously. But he doesn't have all of those, again, air quotes, bad habits to bring with him to this job. He understands money. He understands who's got it in Houston. He understands who wants to spend it in Houston. He understands how to get them to spend it on things like sports, right? And I think that's really important to look at if you're trying to create, you know, first football game of the year against ULV and make it a big event, right? If you're trying to welcome LSU to Energy Stadium and make that a big thing for the University of Houston, how can you tie that more into the university and really sell that event, make that the biggest thing it can be? How can you continue to get those big events happening for the University of Houston, not just have one every couple of years, right? Uh, Further, if he understands all of these aspects of making big time showcase events at the University of Houston, as far as getting the more generic donations to the programs go, that's why you have a associate AD for development and major gifts. As we mentioned, they made a new position for and then hired someone, right? Now, his obvious con is also that he has no real experience with the NCAA. And you wonder about, is he just an event planner? Is that really enough to be an AD? Heaven forbid, knock on wood, if major controversy arises, do you want an event planner navigating the university through that? He seems very competent and very well, at least he's well spoken, so I guess that sounds well thought out. And times we've heard him interviewed about things he's doing with LSSE. But on the whole, he's scheduling and organizing large events. And so I think it begs the question, like, well, what other aspects of the role would he be good at? Right? I think that those are obviously big parts of the role, but what else would he be good at? I wonder about things like working with NIL collectives forever, however long they end up lasting, and then whatever comes after them. And I think the biggest thing with him is there are a bunch of these question marks. It's not that he would be bad at any of them, David Fletcher, that is. It's that we don't have any evidence or experience, right? We can't say, well, I saw him do this other thing that was a lot like that, right? On the whole, would not be upset with him coming to the University of Houston as the AD. It is outside the box. In a conference where you're working with guys like the Brett Yormarks of the world that are constantly pushing to get outside the box. Remember, Brett Yormark came to the Big 12 after working with Rock Nation Sports, right? There's something to be said about this. Hey, if we're going to compete with the SEC and Big 10, we can't keep doing things the way they've been done, right? And so I get why a candidate like David Fletcher would get this far in the process, right? I also, for what it's worth, think it bears mentioning that while he did go to that school in Austin, he's a Houstonian. Like he grew up in Houston, went to Texas, came back to Houston. He understands the city and surrounding area very, very well. And I think that especially amongst the people that got this far in the candidacy, it sounds like, based on the Joseph Duarte article, that's a big leg up because Houston is a beautiful and unique city. It's not Baton Rouge, right? It's not Morgantown. It's not Tuscaloosa. It's not Norman, right? It's not Columbus. Houston is just different. And that means a lot of good things, but it also means someone who understands those differences would go a long way. And so when I look at him and his resume, it's the most off the wall of anyone that's been considered for this position. Just point blank, it just is. But I think there's actually a lot of parts of it that make sense and makes it really intriguing for someone that is this far outside the box, but also this connected to the city. Now, David and Eddie were the two most discussed names in the Joseph Duarte article. It sounds like they may be, I don't want to quite say the word finalists yet, although again, Eddie Nunez did have a source call him the front runner, but it does feel like they've got a leg up amongst the rest of the competition. But two other names got mentioned by Joseph Duarte as, quote, in the mix. And I want to investigate those names and what they bring to the table as well. But we're talking about building a championship caliber program here across the board at the University of Houston. And passion, drive, and patience are what you have to build that kind of championship program. And also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether it's speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. Over 122 million parts for number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because the eBay Motors, you're going to be burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the price you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. If you ride or die live at ebaymotors.com, that's on its only exclusive supply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, so I mentioned that David Fletcher and Eddie Nunez got the most coverage in this latest Houston Chronicle article about who the AD could be. And I want to stress that it's been a very quiet, close to the chest search for an athletic director at Houston. Not a whole lot's just been thrown out there for folks, right? And so that Duarte was able to release this. He frankly tweeted out about 20 minutes before it went out, like, hey, I got more information on the AD search coming, kind of built some anticipation, excitement. The article wasn't even that long. I highly recommend subscribing to the Chronicle. Don't want to pay for it. It's worth it. But it only had 4 names on it. Now, it talked about David Fletcher and Eddie Nunez the most. That's why we gave them each their whole segments of it being very frank. It sounds like they have a big leg up. But as far as the in the mix group goes, 2 other names are thrown in that frankly kind of tie together in terms of where their resumes lie, right? Stephanie Rempe, an AD at Nevada. It might be Rempe. AD at Nevada since 2022. Just got there. Now, Nevada is a big group of 5 school, not a Power 5 or Power 4 school, right? She just got there in 2022. They've had a fairly successful couple years there, and frankly, she's been helping them navigate this NIL world in the Wild Wild West, quite literally. Before that, she was the Associate Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer at LSU. She was also the Chief Operating Officer at Texas A&M in between 2016 and 2019. And she was involved while she was at LSU, I should say, in the very early stages, and she was there 19 to 22, of their NILSU program, right? I didn't call it that at that point, but she's involved in the LSU's NIL program and initiatives, and was kind of one of the key figures in writing up the framework for how they're going to orchestrate, gather, and then distribute those funds. For what's worked at A&M, she was also the COO there, but she was specifically tied to football and men's basketball programs, the high revenue sports. They wanted to give those to her in athletic departments. That's a key sign of respect, right? To say, hey, these 2 things make the dollars that make us all go round. You got them. That's a big, big deal. A lot of, frankly, athletic departments, especially the ones that are size of A&M's, will have 2 different people, one that does football and one that does basketball, right? Or men's basketball. And she got to oversee both. Impressive resume when you factor in the fact that Nevada would not be a typical NIL powerhouse, but she's finding ways to get things done there. Obviously, raise money, right? She is joined in the mix group in the Duarte article by Keli Zinn, who you've heard me talk about before because I liked her resume from the first time she was mentioned. She's currently the executive deputy AD at LSU. She followed Rempe at LSU to get that job. She officially pushed and started the NILSU program, kind of taking what Stephanie put together there and running with it. Before that, she'd been at West Virginia, had a number of different high-ranking AD jobs, including being an interim AD for a brief stint. I believe it was 2015. She's big time over there. And I feel like you've got a number of different ways that show that she is clearly ready to be an athletic director at a Power 4 school. Obviously, she's got West Virginia ties. She was working there for a long time. She's also an alum. Can't go get any job, though. Coming to Houston and beating West Virginia would go a long, long way. So Stephanie and Keli both represent kind of the next set of candidates. Now, what I can't tell from Duarte's article, and I'm not going to read the whole thing word for word to you here. You need to, again, go pay for the Chronicle and read it. Trust me, you won't regret it. Very informative. Duarte is very informative. There you go. Pay to read it. Pay the people to make the stuff. I do think that it's interesting that the other two in the next candidates are women. I think that shows that, obviously with Dr. Couture being involved and things like that, you're going to be looking at people from all different walks of life and backgrounds. Dr. Couture being a woman in charge of this, it's not lost from that she needs to have some diverse candidates that are women as well. But I also think it's interesting that she found women who have experience working at these high-level institutions coming into work here. For what it's worth, Keli Zinn was the first female athletic director at West Virginia. First woman to rank anywhere near that high at West Virginia when she took that job, even at an interim level back in 2015. I know that's almost a decade ago at this point, but that also wasn't that long ago in terms of history and the historical scope of things. And so I feel like that there is a real chance that if one of them has a real great sales pitch or real great resume or real great interview for the job, that they will get a leg up because honestly, they have maybe not been given all the opportunities to this point, right? And so it's kind of like you get in while the getting's good with finding a great candidate like Stephanie or Keli. I would not be upset with any of these four candidates. I want to stress that I, as a Houston Cougar fan, would not be upset with any of the first of these four candidates, right? I will say that they each have their pros and cons. Stephanie and Keli both bring a lot of great NIL experience. Keli has again been a interim AD at a Big 12 school, frankly one that was relatively new to the conference at that. Right, David Fletcher brings a bunch of outside of NCAA experience to come in and navigate the changing landscape. Eddie Nunez has literally done this job before very well, navigated big changes at a different institution, and has also been doing high-end administrative work at an SEC institution before that. I think you cannot go wrong with any of these four people. I will say that it's interesting to look at the creation and then filling of a position recently. We talked about it on yesterday's episode. The Associate AD for Development Common Major Gifts was reportedly filled by Allison White. Great candidate for that job, great person for that job as well. But does that open the door for someone who maybe isn't as money conscious, more of a marketing person, more of an events person, right, to be the AD because they're going to have a person sitting right next to them in charge of all of these other things? I think there's a real chance that that's the case. And I wonder if that's why Fletcher and Nunez got listed as kind of top billing for this piece. And I think it's interesting to look at their resumes and think, okay, I see how they could pair with someone who's a big time money, NIL, etc. person, right? Now, we'll see where things are going. In my plucking and prodding, all I've really gotten out of anyone is like they're trying to do it as fast as possible. They just want to make sure they get the right person. It does feel like this entire search has been kind of last minute. Like I don't think if you asked Dr. Couture at the end of May what she was going to spend her summer doing is be looking for an athletic director, but that's where we went, and that's where we are now, right? And so instead of looking to go backwards and rehash all of that, if you want to do that, you can go check out the episode of Locked On Coogs from back when we did that. But B, it's interesting to see who we pull in because you have to think, and this is total conjecture, total reading between lines. You have to think they want to make this hire before the end of the month and that they want to introduce this person to the fans at the Houston and UNLV football game to kick off the Willie Fritz era. You just have to think that is on the way, and that would require making the hire pretty darn soon. Now, we're going to be breaking down tidbits and whatever we get each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. So make sure you hit subscribe. We're also going to be getting ready for that football season and that football game we just alluded to as the Willie Fritz era is really starting to take off at the University of Houston. So as we get excited for UNLV, Oklahoma, Rice, the Big 12, the whole slate, the recruiting, all of it. We also, there's my dog. We also have a full basketball season to get into as Houston looks to repeat as regular season conference champs and build on that and go farther in the Big 12. Whole lot of fun stuff happening at the University of Houston. So make sure you subscribe, hit the bell so you know live, and we'll bring you the latest Houston Cougars each and every day. If you're looking for a second listen today, go check out Drake Toll's Locked On Big 12. They're doing a great job breaking down who's in the conference, who's out of the conference, what the conference is going to look like this year, preseason this, preseason that. Everything is getting broken down at Locked On Big 12. So I'm going to check that out. Locked On Cougars is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.